morning. I'm Mayor Tommy Roberts. Welcome back to the Mayor's Table. My guest this morning is Mr. Arivn Trujillo, who is the Manager of Government Relations for Four Corners Power Plant, Arizona Public Service. Arivn, welcome to the Mayor's Table.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Glad to be here.
Arivn, there's been a lot going on at the power plants here locally, both at Four Corners Power Plant and at San Juan Generating Station. A lot of news, a lot of it not very good news from my perspective as a mayor of a local community that derives a lot of benefits from the jobs that are created and that exist as a result of the operation of those two power plants. And if we go back about 3 years ago, we can talk about an event, an agreement that has resulted in the closing down of units at Four Corners Power Plant. That was the result of an Environmental Protection Agency rule referred to as the Hayes Rule.
That's correct. That
required Arizona Public Service as the primary owner of Four Corners Power Plant to install what is referred to as selective catalytic reduction pollution control technologies. So I want to start there with our viewers. Can you go back and just very briefly summarize that EPA ruling?
Sure thing, Mr. Mayor. Again, the Hayes Rule was a part of the Clean Air Act. And what was happening at that point in time was the federal government and the state governments were working on putting together a rule to control the emissions of NOx, nitrous oxides. And really there hadn't been that much work done on it. Then with the Obama administration coming in, they made it one of their priorities to get that rule up and operating. As a result of that, the federal government, US EPA, came out with rulings looking at what they believe should be the standards we should follow as far as the removal of NOx. And again, what they're looking to do is to control the amount of emissions of this gas so that it limits the haze, and we have a number of what we call Class 1 recreational sites like Mesa Verde, Grand Canyon, Monument Valley, these areas which they feel would be affected by haze. As a result of that, they came out with some very stringent rules which would have made it very difficult for the power plant to continue operating. We then went into negotiations with US EPA and we came out with what we call the consent decree. As a result of that decree, we indicated that we would shut down our 3 smaller units and decommission those, and then we would go ahead and retrofit the SCRs, known as the selective catalytic reduction equipment, onto our 2 larger units, 4 and 5. And we would have that in place and operational by July of 2018.
And so that brings us to the point where we are now.
Yes.
Arizona Public Service is in the process of preparing to install that pollution control technology. And it's very expensive, by the way.
Yes.
It's very expensive. And we may talk about that here in a few minutes. But the 3 units have been decommissioned. They've been shut down. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And so the next step is the major overhaul of the 2 remaining units, units 4 and 5. And we want to talk about the economic impact that work will have on the community. But let's go back another step and let's talk about the decommissioning of the 3 units. And I want you to talk a bit about the impact on jobs at the mine and at the plant. The Navajo mine, which served the plant, and then the impact on jobs at the plant that came as a result of the decommissioning of those 3 units.
You know, there was a fair amount of impact as a result of coming to that agreement. By shutting down the 3 units, we, in essence, derated our power plant by 560 megawatts. And by doing that, we are anticipating at this point cutting down our overall employment down to about 300, and we're looking at about 300 to 320 employees there at the plant once everything's up and operational, which in its heyday, Four Corners had upwards about 550 employees. So there's that impact. Also, with the derating by 560 megawatts, that means also a decrease in the amount of coal we require from Navajo Mine. And that amounts to about, in round figures, about 1.5 million tons of coal required to continue operations with our 2 larger units. Now, those 2 units combined, we are still generating 1,540 megawatts of power coming from the plant. And so with that, both Four Corners Power Plant and Navajo Mine will eventually see a decrease in the number of employees because of the fact that we're not producing as much electricity. Therefore, we don't need as much coal to be brought into the area.
And that definitely has a direct impact on the local communities. There are significant wages paid for those jobs. I've heard that each of those jobs is worth about $100,000 apiece.
That's correct.
So if you lose 300 jobs, that's about $30 million of lost wages into the surrounding communities.
Yes.
It's a loss of buying power. And that has a dramatic impact on the local economy.
There is impact, and we're still trying to gauge that right now. And it's when we've really started looking at the derating and the retrofit of the SCRs and what we would have to do, we began to combine the information because if you remember also, Mayor, we were in the processes of getting a lease renewed. We were going through the EIS process with that. And we calculated at that point in time, we were generating about $325 million a year annually coming from both operations. Now with the decrease, we still don't have a good feel yet as to what that number will be, but once we get that developed, we'll be able to share with everybody what we're looking at as far as that's concerned. But on another note, to show how much APS as well as the other owners are dedicating themselves towards this effort, in order for us to consent to or meet the consent decree requirements, we took over Southern Cal Edison's portion in the plant. We did renegotiations with the Navajo Nation, and looking at the purchase of the SCRs, the owners of Four Corners Power Plant are going to be putting in about $1 billion into this plant in order for it to continue operations. We're going to have the ability to operate through 2041, but unfortunately too, we have a coal sale agreement with the Navajo Nation up through 2031. Mm-hmm. So at that point, we'll be going back into negotiations in 2028, and we'll see where things are at that point, because as you're well aware, we don't have a crystal ball to see how coal is going to be looking at that point and what its positioning will be at that juncture in time. So,
and you've got some ownership issues as well that are going to have to be worked out. I know Public Service Company of New Mexico as an owner in the plant operations, they're saying they're going to be totally out of coal by 2031, I believe. Mm-hmm. So those will create some issues that have to be addressed at that time. Let's focus a little bit on the work that's going to begin with the overhaul of the 2 remaining units. I want to talk about the economic impact that that work will have in our community. And that work is going to begin right away, as I understand it.
Yes. Right now we're looking at Unit 5, one of our larger units, going down on September, I believe it's September 19th.
That'd be tomorrow.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And we're looking at about a 3-month, about a 95-day shutdown of that unit in order to get all the equipment retrofitted onto that unit. Once that's completed, we'll begin the startup processes on that particular unit, and then we're going to immediately shut down Unit 4. And we're anticipating that happening in December of this year. And we'll start the retrofit process on that unit beginning in December. We anticipate that being completed by April of next year. That gives us until from April to July to make sure we've got everything running and moving as predicted in terms of the emissions and its overall operation. by July of next year, which is when the consent decree is required to be met.
And that means that there are going to be about 7 to 8 months of a lot of activity out at the plant. So how many contractors will be, or subcontractors, how many people will actually be employed in that 7 to 8 month long process?
Well, right now, the total cost of construction of putting these units in line with the consent decree is going to be about $625 million. We will have upwards of 1,600 subcontractors and contractors on site. So we're preparing for that right now because it's going to be like a little anthill there. We're going to have a lot of people working, doing a lot of different things because, as indicated, we've got until July of next year to get these units up and performing with the new environmental equipment. We've got a lot of folks working on getting the supplies and the equipment into the plant area. We've, in order to accommodate laydown areas for this new equipment and these new supplies that will be put on there, we have totally removed units 1, 2, and 3. So the stacks, everything is gone. And so we're cleaning that area up and we're going to use that as a part of our laydown area. If you look into the distance and look at the plant, you'll see that we've erected 3 cranes in the area. So again, all of that's going to be utilized to get the equipment on board. And while we're doing all of this work, the plant's going to still be operating.
Right. So of that 1,600 people who will be involved in this transformation process, how many of those would be new to our community? How many will be coming from outside our area and working temporarily here?
You know, right now we're anticipating at least half of those folks will be coming in new. Right now we're working with the Navajo Nation to find ways to accommodate Navajos for those positions, but even there we'll have different skilled labor coming from different parts of the reservation. So again, we're looking at how we can do this. We're looking for people, or I should say the contractors are looking for experienced people, because quite frankly, with the time frame that we have in place, it's going to be difficult to try to find new people who are just learning how to come on board rather than getting experienced people in place so that we can meet the goals that we have in place.
A lot of those people, I assume, would be staying in hotels and motels in Farmington, surrounding areas.
We've got that. We've got people who are looking for, I'm sure they're looking for areas to haul their trailers in.
Right.
A lot of these guys, some live in campers, but they're looking for places to park their vehicles and have a place to stay. Like I said, a lot of this is temporary work, so you have people coming in at points in time and then they leave and then they come back. And so again, we're working that whole process through to make sure we've got everybody badged in and we've got all the security checks in place. Just a huge operation that we're looking at. But yeah, we're looking at a lot of people coming in.
And they're going to be spending money on goods and services, entertainment.
That's what we're hoping that, that's one of the benefits we hope that the local community will be able to enjoy, is that as we've invested in the plant and we're bringing new opportunities into the plant area, that by getting this construction work done, it's an opportunity for the whole community to benefit from this.
And of course, these are temporary jobs. We'd much prefer those permanent, high-paying jobs, but these are temporary and they're good-paying jobs. So they'll provide an economic bump to our community, and I think we have to appreciate that as well.
And one thing that we're looking at too is we're using a new technology. And so we are also we're exploring right now how to deal with that, because one of the ingredients that we've got to put into this whole process is ammonia. Mm-hmm. And it's just not safe to transport anhydrous or pure ammonia, because if you were to have an accident, that chemical is very volatile, very hazardous. But what we're looking at is utilizing urea, which is a neutral compound by which you can generate ammonia. So we're looking at ways that we might be able to manufacture that in the local area, bring that onto the plant site, and then manufacture ammonia for the whole process. So there's some new technology coming into this.
Our local economic development organization has been working aggressively to try to find a way to bring a urea manufacturing plant into the area. So it's good to hear that that's still in the discussion stages, and maybe we're well on the way to doing that. So, well, Arivn, I want to thank you for being my guest this morning on the
Sure
Mayor's
thing.
Table. I think this is information that a lot of people be interested in knowing and having. I think it's exciting in a way to think about all of that activity out there. Again, we'd like for our jobs to be permanent in nature, but these are jobs nonetheless, and they'll provide an economic boost to our local economy for a period of time. So it's just good information to have, and thank you for being with me this morning.
Sure thing, Mr. Barrett. Again, thank you for everybody's attention, and glad to be here.
We want to thank all of you for joining us once again on the Mayor's Table, and we'll look forward to seeing you again next Monday.